This is a true story, but the names of the characters have been changed. Hi everyone, I'm Michael Carter. Today I'm sharing a story that even I still struggle to forgive myself for. I once thought I could have it all, a happy family, and the excitement of a new love. But when I chose to step into an affair, I didn't realize I was tearing my own life apart. Now as I sit alone in an empty house, I finally understand the price I've had to pay. Listen to my story, and please, don't make the same mistake I did. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 49 years old, living in a quiet suburb east of Seattle, in a place called Bellevue. It's one of those neighborhoods where people drive hybrid cars, and the lawns are always perfectly trimmed. I've been working as a senior manager at a big financial firm downtown for over 2 decades now. The kind of job that looks great on a resume, the one that makes your parents proud. But lately, I've been feeling like it's all just a script I'm reading without much meaning. From the outside, I've got everything a man could want: a solid career, a beautiful home, and a loving wife named Laura. We've been married for 23 years, longer than some people stay at their jobs. Our house is one of those classic, 2-story craftsman-style homes, complete with a white picket fence and a sprawling backyard that Laura turned into her own little garden paradise. In the fall, the maple trees outside our window blaze with shades of red and gold, making the whole neighborhood look like a postcard. I met Laura back in college at the University of Washington. It was the late 90s, and everything felt simpler back then. We bumped into each other at a campus debate. Laura was standing up against the professor, arguing passionately about media ethics during political campaigns. She was sharp, confident, and had this way of talking that made everyone stop and listen. I was smitten before I even realized it. We started dating not long after that, spending our afternoons wandering around Pike Place Market, laughing over cups of coffee at those old hole-in-the-wall cafes, before Starbucks became the juggernaut it is today. The first few years of our marriage were a dream. We were broke but happy, renting a tiny apartment in Kirkland that barely had enough room for our bed and a small kitchen table. I was just starting out in the financial world, working long hours but loving the challenge of it all. Laura was a journalist then, writing for a local newspaper, full of passion for her stories. We didn't have much, but every Friday night, we'd share a bottle of wine, watch some old movies, and talk about our plans for the future. Kids, a house, maybe even a dog. Eventually, those dreams came true. We saved up enough to buy our current house in Bellevue, a big milestone for us. I can still remember moving in, hauling boxes in the rain, laughing like kids as we planned where everything would go. Laura spent months picking out furniture and painting the walls, making sure every corner of the house felt like home. She's always had an eye for design, something that came in handy when we started hosting dinner parties for my colleagues or holiday gatherings with friends. But as the years went by, something shifted. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when it happened, but looking back, I think it started once I got that big promotion at work. Suddenly, my job wasn't just a job anymore. It was everything. I was at the office more than I was at home. Late night meetings, early morning conference calls, business trips that blurred together. It wasn't unusual for me to leave before sunrise and get back long after dinner. Laura understood at first. She knew this was what I had worked so hard for, what I thought I wanted. Laura, on the other hand, had moved on from journalism and thrown herself into philanthropy. She's now the head of a non-profit organization that helps homeless youth in Seattle. I couldn't be prouder of her. She's always had a big heart and this incredible drive to make the world a better place. But her passion for her work also means she's just as busy as I am. There were weeks where we'd barely see each other, both of us getting home exhausted, exchanging tired smiles before collapsing into bed. Over time, our once lively conversations became quick check-ins. How was your day? Fine, yours? And that was it. Dinner was often eaten in silence, the only sound the clinking of silverware against plates. I'd sit across from her at the dining table, looking at the woman I married, and feel like I was staring at a stranger. We still loved each other, I think, but the spark, the connection we once had, was buried under layers of routine, work stress, and unspoken disappointment. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't noticed it sooner. The change was gradual, like a slow leak you don't realize until you're standing in a flooded kitchen. We both chose to ignore it, chalking it up to the reality of a long marriage. This is normal, I'd tell myself. People grow apart, it doesn't mean we don't love each other. But deep down, I knew something was missing. I'd look at Laura sitting on the couch, lost in a book, her face lit by the soft glow of the reading lamp, and I'd wonder if she felt it too. On weekends, we used to go for hikes together, exploring the trails around Mount Rainier, or kayaking on Lake Washington. It was our way of escaping the grind and reconnecting with each other. But lately those trips became rare. Laura often had charity events, and I was usually swamped with work projects. When we did have a free day, we'd end up doing our own things. She'd be in her garden or at a meeting, and I'd find myself at the golf course, or buried in emails. It's a strange feeling, living in a beautiful home, surrounded by everything you thought you wanted, and yet feeling like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into a vast, empty space. I'd lie awake at night, listening to Laura's steady breathing beside me, wondering how we got here, wondering if this was just a phase, or if we had truly lost something vital along the way. I remember looking in the mirror one morning, seeing a face I barely recognized. The hair at my temples had turned gray. The lines around my eyes deeper than I remembered. I wasn't the ambitious young guy Laura married. I had become a middle-aged man stuck in a routine, driven by a sense of obligation rather than passion. I was just going through the motions, trying to convince myself that this was enough. And then one summer afternoon, everything started to change. It was at a corporate seminar on media strategies of all places, where I met Lily, a woman who made me feel like I hadn't felt in years, like a spark had been reignited, making me question everything I thought I knew about my life and my marriage. The day I met Lily was like any other day in the office. It was mid-July, the kind of hot Seattle day where the sun seemed relentless, beating down on the city without a cloud in sight. I was already running late, caught in the usual traffic jam on I-90, the skyline of Seattle taunting me from a distance as I inched closer to the city center. By the time I parked and made my way into the conference room for our corporate seminar, the event was already well underway. It was a typical corporate gathering, full of stiff suits and forced smiles. I had attended these seminars countless times before, and they all blurred together. The same slide decks, the same buzzwords, the same hollow promises of synergy and market disruption. I was zoning out, half listening to the presenter drone on about the latest media strategies, when I noticed a woman sitting across the room. She wasn't like the rest of us in our bland corporate attire. She stood out, not just because of her appearance, but because of the way she carried herself. She had blonde hair that shimmered like it had caught the last light of the day, cascading down her shoulders in loose waves. Her bright blue eyes seemed to sparkle, even under the harsh fluorescent lights of the conference room. She wore a simple but elegant black dress, far more stylish than the usual business suits around us. And then there was her smile, warm, inviting, and just a bit mischievous, like she knew a secret the rest of us didn't. I didn't know it at the time, but that was Lily. The seminar dragged on, and as we broke into small discussion groups, I found myself standing next to her. "So, what do you think of all this?" she asked, her voice light and playful, as if we were sharing an inside joke. There was something refreshing about her energy. It was like she wasn't taking any of it too seriously, which was a stark contrast to everyone else in the room. "Honestly, it's the same old stuff," I replied, feeling oddly relaxed around her, despite having just met. "They give these talks every year, but nothing really changes." She laughed, a sound that felt like it cut through the monotony of the day. "Yeah, I kind of figured that out on day one," she said, giving me a knowing look. "I'm Lily, by the way, marketing department. I just started a few months ago." "Michael," I introduced myself. "Senior management, financial services. I've been around a bit longer than a few months." I flashed a wry smile, surprised by how naturally the words came out. I was usually more reserved, especially at work, but with Lily, it was different. We spent the rest of the session standing next to each other, making small comments about the presentation, quietly mocking some of the more absurd corporate jargon. It was the first time in a long while that I found myself genuinely enjoying a work event. I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted. After the seminar ended, the crowd spilled out into the hallway. People began drifting toward the exits, eager to get back to their offices or beat the rush hour traffic. I was about to do the same when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Lily. "Hey Michael," she said, flashing that radiant smile again. "A few of us from the marketing team are heading over to the Pine Box for drinks. You should join us." I hesitated for a moment. Normally, I'd head straight home or back to the office, but there was something about her invitation that I didn't want to refuse. "Sure," I said, surprising even myself. I could use a drink. The Pine Box was a trendy bar in Capitol Hill, set in what used to be a funeral home. It had this dark, moody atmosphere, with exposed brick walls and dim lighting, the kind of place that felt like it had stories to tell. We sat at a corner booth, and I found myself surrounded by a younger crowd, mostly from the marketing team. They were lively, full of ideas and energy, a stark contrast to the stiff, formal environment I was used to in my department. Lily was sitting across from me, leaning forward on the table, her chin resting on her hand, as she listened intently to a colleague's story. Every so often, she'd glance over at me and smile, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but one that made me feel noticed in a way I hadn't felt in years. As the night wore on, the group thinned out. People had to leave for early meetings or to catch the last bus home. Eventually, it was just the two of us left, nursing our drinks. The noise of the bar seemed to fade into the background, leaving us in a bubble of our own. "So tell me, Michael," Lily said, her voice softer now, almost intimate. "How long have you been at the company?" "Too long," I laughed, taking a sip of my whiskey. "Almost 20 years. I've seen the company grow, change hands, rebrand, restructure. It's like watching a teenager go through phases." "And you like it?" she asked, tilting her head slightly as she studied my face. I hesitated, not sure how honest I wanted to be. "It's a job," I said finally. "It's stable, it pays well, and it's what I've built my life around. But I don't know if I'd say I love it. Not anymore, at least." There it was, a truth I hadn't admitted out loud before. I felt strangely vulnerable, but also relieved, like I'd finally cracked open a window to let some fresh air in. Lily leaned back, swirling the last of her cocktail in her glass. "I get it," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "That's why I left my old job. I was in New York, working for a big agency. It was exciting at first, but then it just became routine. I needed a change." "Why Seattle?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Why leave New York for here?" She smiled, a soft, wistful smile. "I wanted a fresh start. I was tired of the same old grind, the same kind of people. Seattle felt different. It felt, I don't know, more open, more real." I nodded, understanding more than I expected to. I had never left Seattle, but I knew that feeling of wanting something different, something more. It was something I'd been pushing down for years, convincing myself that stability was enough. We talked like that for hours, about work, about life, about everything and nothing at the same time. There was a connection there, one I hadn't felt with anyone in a long time. It was easy, effortless. When I finally glanced at my watch, it was past midnight. "I should go," I said reluctantly, realizing how late it had gotten. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Me too," she said, standing up and grabbing her coat. "But this was nice. We should do it again sometime." "Yeah," I agreed, slipping into my jacket. "We should." We walked out together into the cool Seattle night, the city lights casting a soft glow on the wet pavement. As we stood there, about to go our separate ways, she turned to me and said, "You know, Michael, you're different from the others. It's nice talking to someone who actually listens." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "Thanks, Lily, I enjoyed it too." She gave me one last smile, a smile that lingered even after she turned and walked away. I stood there for a moment, watching her disappear into the crowd, and I felt a strange mix of excitement and guilt. It was just a drink, just a conversation, but it felt like something more, like the beginning of a story I wasn't sure I wanted to start. But in that moment, standing alone on the sidewalk, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I did. Since that night at the Pine Box, I couldn't stop thinking about Lily. I knew it was wrong. I've lived long enough to understand that people don't just enter your life by accident, especially not someone like Lily. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself that it was just a fleeting moment, a bit of excitement, after years of a dull marriage, I couldn't help but flip to seeing her in the office. There was something about Lily that made me feel alive again, like I had stepped through a door into a world I'd forgotten existed. At first, it was just a few exchanged jokes in the hallway. small conversations that seemed casual, but were loaded with unspoken meaning. A look across the conference room, a fleeting smile as she walked past my desk. But then, things didn't just stop there. One Thursday evening, after a grueling day of back-to-back meetings, I found myself standing in the lobby downstairs, ready to head home. As I was about to walk out, I heard a voice call out behind me, "Michael!" Lily approached me, her heels clicking confidently against the marble floor. "Do you have any plans tonight?" I looked at her, those bright blue eyes of hers, sparkling, just like the first time we met. "Nothing special," I replied. "I was just going to head home." Lily watched me for a moment, as if she was weighing something in her mind. Then she gave me a playful, almost daring smile. "Have you ever done something reckless, Michael?" The question made me laugh. "Reckless? At my age?" I joked, though a part of me felt the challenge in her words. "Yes," she said, stepping closer, her gaze locked on mine, unflinching. "We live in a world full of rules and schedules. Sometimes we need to break them." My heart started pounding faster. I was used to being the responsible man, the faithful husband, the father who always played by the book. But standing in front of Lily, all those rules seemed to blur. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I didn't want to stop. "So, what do you have in mind?" I asked, noticing the unexpected excitement in my own voice. "Come with me," she said, grabbing my hand and pulling me along. We walked out of the building, her laughter echoing in the night air like a melody I hadn't heard in years. We strolled through the streets of Seattle, the street lights casting reflections on the rain-soaked pavement. Lily led me to a small, discreet hotel tucked away in a narrow alley. It was a place I'd never been before, a place I would never think to go in my usual life. My heart raced, beating so fast I thought it might burst, as if I were a teenager again, rediscovering the thrill of the unknown. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her eyes full of daring, yet with a hint of vulnerability. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I pulled her close and kissed her with a passion I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't something I planned to do, but I couldn't hold back. Everything happened so fast, so intensely. We rushed into the hotel room, shutting the door behind us, leaving behind any sense of caution or reason. I felt like I was reliving the years of my youth, when love was something wild, uncontrollable, and full of raw desire. We lay on the bed, both of us breathing heavily. Lily looked at me, her eyes filled with so many unspoken words. I didn't say anything either. For me, the moment was enough. It was the first time in years that I felt truly alive. After that night, there was no going back. Our relationship couldn't return to just casual glances and small talk in the office. We started finding small moments to be together. A quick lunch at the cafe around the corner, a glass of wine after work, or even just a late-night text when neither of us could sleep. Lily became a part of my life, a secret I kept to myself like a precious gem hidden away. I knew I was walking down a dangerous path, one that many before me had stumbled on before reaching the end. But when I was with Lily, I felt like a different man. No longer Michael Carter, the responsible manager, the loyal husband, the father of 2 grown kids. I was just a man, intoxicated by the rush of new love, craving the intensity I hadn't felt in years. There was one time, we met at a fancy restaurant by the waterfront. It was a summer evening, the breeze from the sea gently tousling Lily's hair as the sun dipped below the horizon. She wore a red dress that made her look more radiant than ever before. We sat across from each other, the red wine glistening in the candlelight between us. "Michael," Lily said, her voice low and intimate, like a secret being whispered in the dark, "have you ever thought about leaving everything behind? Leaving your job, your life as it is now, and Laura?" Her question cut through the romantic atmosphere like a knife. I fell silent, staring into her deep, questioning eyes. I didn't know how to respond. I knew I had pushed things too far, that I was risking everything I had, but at the same time, I also knew that I didn't want to stop. "I don't know," I finally replied, my voice heavy with the weight of my own confusion. "I only know that I don't want to lose you." Lily smiled, a sad yet understanding smile. "Then don't lose me, Michael. Don't make me the one who stands in the shadows forever." That night, I went back home. Laura was sitting on the sofa, reading a book as she often did. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated her face, making her look like a portrait of calm and serenity. But when I looked at her, a deep sense of guilt washed over me. I knew I was betraying the woman who had stood by me for so many years. The woman who had helped build the life I once dreamed of. And that was when I realized that maybe, just maybe, I had walked into a maze from which there was no easy way out. Everything between me and Lily had changed. We had crossed a line, far beyond innocent conversations and fleeting glances in the office hallway. Our relationship became my biggest secret, a part of my life I both cherished and felt guilty about. Lily wasn't just a colleague or a temporary thrill anymore. She had become essential, the spark I hadn't realized I'd been missing. In the beginning, we found brief moments to be together. We'd make excuses to leave the office for a quick lunch, choosing small, hidden cafes far from the company's reach. We'd sit close together in the corner, her foot gently brushing against mine under the table. Each touch sending an electric current through my body. Lily would tease me with a playful smile and ask, "Do you remember the last time you felt this kind of excitement?" I would only smile back, unable to respond, because the truth was painfully obvious. I hadn't felt this way in years, maybe even decades. Soon, our meetings extended beyond these quick, stolen moments. We started planning entire afternoons together, both of us pretending to be out on business meetings. I still remember the first time we went to a small hotel by Lake Washington. It was quiet, secluded, with a beautiful view of the water. When we walked into the room, Lily turned to me with a mischievous look. "Have you ever done something this crazy before?" she whispered before pulling me into a deep kiss. We lost ourselves in each other, like two people who had been starving for far too long. It wasn't just about the physical connection, it was about freedom. A chance to escape the suffocating expectations of our everyday lives. With Lily, I wasn't Michael Carter, the middle-aged man trapped in a mundane marriage and a stressful job. I felt like I was young again, filled with energy and passion. Our relationship quickly became an all-consuming affair. We texted each other constantly, our messages filled with flirtation and desire. Like a private game we both knew was risky, but couldn't resist playing. Some mornings, before heading to the office, Lily would call me to her apartment. Her place in Capitol Hill became our secret haven. A world where it was just the two of us, where we could forget about everything outside. The first time I arrived at her apartment early in the morning, I felt a rush of excitement I hadn't felt in years. Lily was standing there, wearing nothing but a thin white shirt, her hair tousled, looking effortlessly beautiful. She pulled me close, wrapping her arms around my neck. "We only have a few hours, Michael. Let's not waste any time," she whispered. No words were needed. We tumbled onto her bed, losing ourselves in each other's touch. Every time I felt the softness of her skin, it was like I was transported back to my youth. I found myself laughing more, feeling invigorated, as though I could conquer the world with just one look from her. We started taking short trips together. Lily always suggested places I'd never considered. Once, she convinced me to take a ferry to Whidbey Island. We rented a small cabin by the beach, surrounded by nothing but the sound of the waves and the wind rustling through the trees. Lily wore a simple white dress, her bare feet digging into the sand as she danced along the shoreline, looking like a scene from a painting. I sat on the beach, watching her, feeling a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. "Do you feel free, Michael?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the waves crashing behind her. "Freer than I've ever felt," I replied, and it was true. I hadn't felt this liberated, this unburdened in years. In those moments, there were no worries, no pressure, just us, living in the present, without a thought for tomorrow. Other times, we'd simply drive aimlessly through the suburbs of Seattle, with no destination in mind. Lily would sit next to me, her bare feet propped up on the dashboard, her head resting on my shoulder. We'd play old songs on the radio, singing along with the lyrics as if we were two carefree teenagers. These moments were small, fleeting, but they brought me a kind of joy and lightness I had forgotten existed. Our encounters weren't just about physical desire, though that was a big part of it. There was a deeper connection, something that went beyond mere lust. Lily had a way of making me open up, talk about things I'd buried deep inside. We'd lie next to each other, her fingers gently running through my hair, as she asked me about my dreams from when I was young. I told her about the life I had once imagined, the ambitions I had abandoned along the way. "With me, you can be whoever you want," Lily whispered softly. "I don't need you to be perfect, Michael. I don't need you to be the Michael Carter everyone else knows." I just need you to be you. Her words were like a balm, soothing away the guilt and fear, making me feel truly seen and loved for the first time in years. With Lily I felt young, free and full of life in a way I hadn't experienced in what felt like forever. Although I knew deep down that this relationship couldn't last forever, that we were living in a fragile bubble of fantasy, I couldn't make myself stop. Each time I went back home, stepping back into the mundane reality of my life with Laura, it felt like I was coming down from a beautiful dream, returning to a gray, monotonous existence. The idea of taking Lily on a business trip came to me almost impulsively. I had an important meeting scheduled in San Francisco, a project I had been pursuing for months. Normally, I would go alone, or take another colleague from the finance department. But this time, as I sat with Lily in the office on a Friday afternoon, watching her laugh and smile, I thought, why not? Why not turn a mundane business trip into something special for the both of us? I texted Lily that night. How would you like to come with me to San Francisco next week? It's a work trip, but we'll have plenty of free time together. Her response was immediate. I'll make it work. Let's turn this trip into a memory we won't forget. We flew to San Francisco early on a Tuesday morning. I remember feeling a flutter of excitement, like a young man on his first date, as I held her hand on the plane. She rested her head on my shoulder, and everything felt different. In the past, business trips were always rushed, focused solely on work, but this time was different. With Lily by my side, everything seemed brighter, more vibrant. The moment we touched down at the airport, we had already started planning what we would do once the meeting was over. The meeting itself was in the morning, and lasted almost half the day. I sat in the conference room, trying to stay focused, but my mind kept drifting back to Lily. She was waiting for me at the hotel, probably relaxing and enjoying the view of the city from our suite on one of the upper floors. The thought of her being there brought a smile to my face, giving me the motivation to finish the meeting quickly. When I returned to the hotel, Lily was sitting on the sofa, wearing a stunning red dress that highlighted her blonde hair, cascading over her shoulders. She looked radiant. How was the meeting? She asked, her eyes full of anticipation. Nothing special, I replied, walking towards her and pulling her into my arms. But I couldn't stop thinking about you the whole time. Lily smiled and kissed me gently on the lips. I've been waiting for you all morning. Now we have the entire afternoon to ourselves. We decided to take a walk along Baker Beach, where we could see the Golden Gate Bridge glowing under the afternoon sun. Lily walked ahead of me, pulling my hand, laughing like a carefree girl full of life. We took off our shoes, feeling the soft sand beneath our feet as the waves rolled in, gently caressing our toes. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling, and kissed me deeply. A kiss that seemed to last forever, as if we were trying to hold on to that moment indefinitely. Have you ever done something this crazy before? Lily asked, her voice blending with the sound of the waves. Never, I said, smiling, but for you I'd do anything. We returned to the hotel as the sun dipped below the horizon. Inside the room, the soft golden light illuminated Lily's face as she stood by the window, looking out at the city lights sparkling in the night. I walked up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist. You know, I whispered in her ear, I've never felt this free. And I've never felt this happy, Lily replied, turning around to look at me with eyes full of love. That night, we didn't talk much. We didn't need to. There were only soft touches, passionate kisses, and the feeling of belonging to each other. All the stress, the responsibilities, and the weight of the world outside vanished. It was just the two of us, living fully in the present moment. I felt like all the worries of my life had melted away. Everything I needed was right there, in front of me. The next morning, we decided to spend the entire day exploring the city. Lily wanted to visit Lombard Street, the famous winding road of San Francisco. We walked up the steep incline, hand in hand, as if we were afraid that if we let go, this perfect moment might slip away. Lily's laughter filled the air, pulling me along, as if she were leading me on an endless adventure. We stopped at a small cafe, ordered 2 espressos, and sat at a table outside. Lily leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and breathed in the fresh air, looking so free and at ease. I could live here forever, she said, opening her eyes to look at me. What about you, Michael? Could you leave everything behind and start a new life with me? Her question caught me off guard. I knew she was joking, but I could sense a hint of truth in her voice. I chuckled softly, taking her hand in mine. I don't know, I admitted, but I do know that I want to be with you, at least in this moment. That afternoon, we rented a car and drove along the coastline to Sausalito. Lily sat beside me, her fingers intertwined with mine, her head resting on my shoulder. We didn't say much. We let the sea breeze play with our hair, soaking in the freedom we had both been craving. We stopped at a small seaside restaurant, ordered a bottle of wine, and sat together, watching the sun set over the ocean. On the drive back to the hotel, Lily turned to me, her voice softer, more serious. Michael, I don't want this to be just a fleeting dream. I want it to be our reality, our life together. I knew I couldn't answer her truthfully. I couldn't promise what she wanted, but I didn't want to disappoint her either. I understand, I said quietly, and I want that too, Lily, but life isn't as simple as that. She gave me a sad smile, saying nothing more. We drove back to the hotel in silence, ending what had been a perfect day, with a sense of unspoken longing and bittersweet regret. This trip was supposed to be a beautiful escape, a memory we could cherish, but it also planted the seed of something more. The realization that what we had wasn't just a fling, but something deeper, something neither of us could easily walk away from. As we returned to Seattle, I knew that the days ahead would be different. We had crossed another line, and there was no turning back. The dream was starting to blend into reality, and the bubble we were living in was beginning to show the first cracks. My relationship with Lily had felt like a beautiful dream, an escape from the mundane life I had been living. But like all dreams, it had to end, and the beginning of that end came one quiet Saturday evening. While I was at home with Laura, we were sitting together on the sofa watching a movie we used to love. The atmosphere was calm, but there was an underlying tension I couldn't ignore. I tried to act normal, pretending that everything was fine, that I was the loyal husband I once believed I was. Suddenly my phone buzzed, breaking the rare moment of peace. I glanced at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw Lily's name flashing on the display. I picked up the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. Michael, her voice sounded slurred, tinged with the unmistakable sadness of someone who had been drinking. I feel so lonely. I need to see you right now. I stood up quickly and walked into the hallway, out of Laura's sight. Lily, this isn't a good time. I'm at home, I whispered, trying to keep my voice low, but she continued crying, the sound of her sobs tugging at my heart. I can't take this anymore, Michael. I don't want to be the other woman forever. When I returned to the living room, Laura was staring at me, her eyes filled with a suspicion I hadn't seen before. Who was that? She asked, her voice colder than usual. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. It was a client, I lied. They need to meet urgently. Laura's gaze didn't waver. Her eyes seemed to pierce right through me, as if she was searching for the truth behind my words. A client calling you on a Saturday night, and they need to see you immediately? She asked, her tone laced with sarcasm. I felt as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong step away from a devastating fall. Yes, it's an unusual situation, I replied, forcing a smile to mask my anxiety. I won't be long. As I left the house, I could feel Laura's cold, questioning stare boring into my back. It wasn't just the look of a concerned wife, it was the look of a woman who was starting to realize something was very wrong. My heart raced as I hurried to my car, a wave of fear washing over me, stronger than I had ever felt before. When I arrived at Lily's apartment, she was sitting on the floor, surrounded by empty wine bottles. Her eyes were puffy and red from crying, her face pale. She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of heartbreak and desperation. Michael, she said, her voice trembling, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be just a small part of your life. I knelt down beside her, pulling her into my arms. I know, I whispered, feeling the weight of her pain. But you understand, don't you? My life, it's not that simple to change. Lily lifted her head, her eyes glistening with tears. Then choose, Michael. It's either me or her. I can't keep waiting for a future that may never come. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I could feel the weight of the ultimatum, the realization that I was standing at a crossroads I hadn't prepared myself to face. I had been fooling myself, believing I could continue living this double life without consequence. But now, reality was crashing down around me. We sat there in silence, holding each other, saying nothing more, but I knew everything had changed. This wasn't just a casual affair anymore. It had become something deeper, something I couldn't easily walk away from. Yet at the same time, I was risking everything I had, my career, my family, the life I had built over 2 decades. When I returned home, Laura was still sitting on the sofa, but this time she didn't look at me. Instead, she kept her eyes on her book, her face expressionless. I sat down next to her, trying to start a conversation, but she responded with short, distant answers. The air between us felt heavy, as if an invisible wall had been erected, separating the two of us. In the following days, I noticed small changes in Laura's behavior. She no longer asked me about work, nor did she seem concerned when I came home late. But every time I walked through the door, there was a different feeling in the air. The messages from Lily kept coming in as usual, filled with longing and desire. But I found it harder to respond. Part of me wanted to keep the affair alive, but another part was starting to fear that the end was near. One morning, as I was getting ready to leave for work, Laura suddenly asked, "Michael, you've been busier than usual lately. Is there something you need to tell me?" Her question wasn't like the usual questions she would ask. It carried an undercurrent of suspicion, almost like a warning. I forced a smile and replied, "No, nothing at all. It's just the busy season at work." But I knew she didn't believe me, and I realized that she might have already started piecing things together, might have begun asking the difficult questions. The walls were closing in, and I knew I didn't have much time before everything came crashing down. This was the beginning of the end, the turning point where I would have to confront the choices I'd made. It was no longer just a game of deception. It was a collision course with the reality I'd been avoiding. In the weeks following Lily's drunken phone call, our relationship lost its lightness. Lily was no longer the vibrant, carefree woman who saw our affair as a thrilling adventure. Instead, she started to demand more, expecting me to make a decision about our future together. Every time we met, I could sense a change in the way she looked at me, as if she was waiting for me to say something definitive. Something that neither of us could take back. One late evening, after a long day of back-to-back meetings, I received a text from Lily. "I need to see you right now. There's something important we need to talk about." I knew this wouldn't be a typical meeting. When I arrived at her apartment, Lily was standing by the window, looking out at the dark city skyline. The streetlights illuminated her face, highlighting the sadness in her eyes. "Lily, what's going on?" I asked, approaching her cautiously. She turned around, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Michael, I can't keep doing this," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "I want more. I want a real life with you, not just these secret meetings and hidden moments." I felt my heart sink, as if a heavy weight had been placed on my chest. I had known this moment would come, but I wasn't ready to face it. "Lily, you know I love you," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But it's not that simple. I can't just walk away from my entire life. I have responsibilities. I have Laura." Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "What about me, Michael? Have you thought about what I need? I've waited. I've hoped that you would make a decision. But every day that passes, I feel more trapped." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly, as if I could somehow take away her pain. "I know," I whispered. "I know how much you've sacrificed for this, but I need more time." "How much more time?" Lily pushed me away, looking directly into my eyes. "A month? A year? Forever? I can't be the other woman anymore, living in the shadows." I didn't know what to say. Every word felt hollow. I just stood there, looking at her, seeing the hurt in Lily's eyes, a hurt that I had caused. For days afterward, I couldn't stop thinking about what Lily had said. Every time I saw a message from her, it felt like a hand squeezing my heart. I knew I was standing at a critical juncture, a decision I could no longer avoid. I started questioning whether I truly wanted to leave Laura and start a new life with Lily. And if I did, would a life with Lily bring the happiness I imagined, or was it just an illusion I had created in my mind? I remember one night, Lily asked me to take a walk around Lake Union. The wind blew gently through her hair, making it dance in the moonlight. "Do you ever think about our future, Michael?" she asked softly, almost as if she were pleading. "I think about it all the time," I replied, squeezing her hand. "But our future isn't as simple as you make it seem. There are too many things I have to consider." "But if you really loved me, wouldn't it be simpler?" Lily asked, her eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. I didn't know how to respond. I just stayed silent, staring out at the shimmering surface of the lake, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I knew she couldn't wait forever, and her patience was wearing thin. One Saturday afternoon, while Laura was visiting our daughter in Portland, Lily and I decided to spend the entire day together. We drove out to Snoqualmie Falls, a quiet scenic spot that we both loved. We sat on a patch of green grass, watching the powerful waterfall crash down, the sound of the water like a soothing backdrop to our conversation. "Michael," Lily said, her voice gentle but firm, "I can't keep doing this. I need you to make a decision, and I need it now." I turned to look at her, feeling the determination in her gaze. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You know it's not easy. I can't just leave everything behind overnight." "Then choose," Lily replied, her voice filled with an intensity I hadn't heard before. "Leave Laura, or I leave you. I can't keep living in a relationship where I'm always second, always in the shadows." It felt like someone was ripping open my chest. I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had pushed everything too far, and now I was caught between two women I couldn't bear to lose. "I need time to think," I managed to say, my voice breaking. "I need time to figure this out." "You don't have much time left, Michael," Lily said, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and frustration. "I can't wait forever. I need to know that you really want to be with me." We sat there in silence, the distance between us growing wider despite our physical closeness. I knew this conversation was the beginning of a major shift, a decision I couldn't keep delaying. In the following days the tension only grew. Lily's texts became shorter, her tone colder. I could feel her slipping away, and it terrified me. At the same time, Laura's behavior started changing too. She didn't ask as many questions about my work, didn't seem concerned when I came home late. But every time I walked through the door, I felt a shift in the air, a silent suspicion that seemed to hang between us. I had always feared this day would come, and it came sooner than I expected. It was a night like any other. I returned home late after meeting with Lily. The house was dark, except for the dim light from the table lamp in the living room. As I stepped inside, I saw Laura sitting there, her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on me, devoid of the usual warmth I was accustomed to. "Michael," she began, her voice as cold as a blade slicing through the silence, "is there something you need to tell me?" My heart pounded in my chest. I knew I couldn't keep dodging this anymore. It felt like the entire world I had carefully built was crumbling down around me. Every lie I had told was being exposed. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Laura, I'm sorry," I said, my voice hoarse. "I've done something unforgivable." Laura sat still, her eyes red-rimmed but no tears fell. "I hired a private investigator," she continued, her voice cracking. "I know everything, Michael. I know about Lily, about the nights you spent with her, about the fake business trips. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that it was all in my head. But it wasn't. It felt like a knife had been driven straight into my heart. There was nothing left to hide." I sank down onto the couch beside her, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry, Laura," I whispered. "I don't know what to say. I made a terrible mistake." "So it's true," she said, her voice breaking. "You cheated on me. After more than 20 years together, this is how you repay me." Finally, the tears spilled down her cheeks, and it broke something inside of me. I wanted to reach out, to hold her and tell her that everything would be okay, but I knew that would only cause her more pain. "I'm sorry," I repeated, but the words felt hollow. Laura took a deep breath, visibly trying to steady herself. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I thought about leaving you, about walking away from everything. But then I remembered all the years we've shared, all the times we faced challenges together." I looked into her eyes, surprised to see not only anger and hurt, but also a deep sadness. "I've thought a lot about this, Michael," Laura continued, "and I want to try to forgive you. I'm not saying I can forget what you did, but I'm willing to give us another chance, if you're willing to end things with Lily." Her words stunned me. I had prepared myself for the end, for her anger and accusations, but I hadn't expected forgiveness. A new kind of pain washed over me. Not the pain of losing an affair, but the pain of realizing how deeply I had wounded the woman who had stood by me for so many years, who had sacrificed so much for our marriage. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Can you really forgive me after everything I've done?" Laura nodded, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Not immediately, but I'm willing to try. I love you, Michael, and if you still love me, if you truly want to make things right, I'm willing to give us a chance." I nodded, tears welling up in my own eyes. "I'll end it with Lily," I promised, feeling the weight of my words like a stone pressing on my chest. "I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust." We sat there in silence, neither of us speaking. I wrapped my arms around Laura, feeling her body tremble against mine. It was a moment filled with raw emotion, where both of us knew that things would never be the same again. But at least, we had a chance to start over. I knew that making this decision wouldn't be easy. Ending things with Lily would be a confrontation I wasn't prepared for. I had let myself get too deeply entangled, and I wasn't sure if Lily would accept it. But I had made a promise to Laura, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity, a need to keep that promise. A few days later, I sent a text message to Lily. "We need to meet. I have something important to tell you." I didn't explain the details, but I knew she would sense what was coming. Our final meeting took place at a small cafe we frequented when we wanted to avoid prying eyes. As I walked in, I saw Lily already sitting there, her smile fading when she caught sight of my expression. "What's wrong, Michael?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I can't do this anymore," I said, feeling a sharp pain in my chest as I spoke the words. "Laura knows everything. She's willing to give me a chance to fix things, but only if I end this with you." Lily sat in stunned silence, as if the air had been knocked out of her. "So you're choosing her," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I love you, Lily, but I have to do the right thing." And in that moment I realized I had truly lost Lily, and perhaps a part of myself as well. Laura had decided to give me a second chance, but she needed time to process everything. She moved out to stay with our daughter in Portland for a while, saying she needed space to heal and figure things out. I respected her decision and hoped this time apart would give us a chance to rebuild our marriage. But I underestimated Lily. She couldn't accept that I had chosen to return to Laura. For her, it felt like a betrayal. Young and impulsive, Lily believed that our love was unbreakable. She wasn't the kind of person to let go easily. Instead, she decided to fight for what she thought was hers. One evening, when I was alone at home, Lily showed up unannounced. There was no playful smile, no warmth in her eyes. Instead, she looked furious, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "You told me you loved me," she screamed, her voice filled with rage. "And now you're going back to her? You promised me, Michael. You said we'd be together." "Lily, I've tried to explain," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Laura is my wife. She's the mother of my children. I can't just abandon her like this. We went too far, but now I need to do what's right." "Do what's right?" Lily laughed bitterly, her voice cold and mocking. "You think I'm just going to let you go back to her? You think I'm going to sit back and watch you pretend like nothing ever happened?" I had never seen her like this before. To me, she had always been a passionate, carefree woman, but now I saw another side of her, reckless, demanding, and willing to cross any line. Lily wasn't someone who would quietly step aside. In the days that followed, things escalated quickly. Lily's messages were no longer filled with love and longing. They were angry, demanding, and at times threatening. I heard from mutual friends that she had even hired people to create trouble at Laura's workplace. One day, a group of strange men showed up, shouting and causing a scene. They made vague but frightening threats, telling Laura that she should leave me if she didn't want any more trouble. Laura was terrified. She had to call the police, but even that wasn't the end of it. Lily's behavior became even more erratic. She started targeting our daughter in Portland. One evening, our daughter called Laura in a panic, her voice trembling with fear. "Mom, there's a strange man outside my house," she said. "He keeps saying things about Dad, telling me not to trust him." Laura couldn't take it anymore. Her voice was filled with tears when she called me. "Michael," she said, struggling to keep her composure, "we can't go on like this. I've tried, but I can't put our daughter's safety at risk. I'm filing for divorce." Hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. I knew things had spiraled out of control, far beyond what I had ever imagined. I had hurt the woman I loved the most, and now I was paying the price for the choices I had made. A few months after Laura filed for divorce, Lily and I moved in together. At first, I tried convincing myself that I had made the right choice. Lily was young, vibrant, and she made me feel alive again, like I had rediscovered my youth. But soon the cracks began to show. Lily wasn't like Laura. She wasn't patient, she wasn't nurturing. Instead, she was demanding, often complaining about everything, from work to the smallest inconveniences in our daily life. When I faced problems, she didn't stand by me or offer comfort. Instead, she became angry and irrational, always wanting more, and never satisfied. I remember one evening vividly. I came home exhausted after a long day at work. All I wanted was a moment of peace, a kind word, someone to share my burden with. But as I walked through the door, Lily was waiting for me, her face twisted with anger. "Why are you so late?" she snapped, her voice cold and accusing. "You always say you're busy, but I know you're just avoiding me." I was too tired to argue. "Lily, I had a long day," I said, my voice weary. "I just want to rest." "Then go rest by yourself," she spat, turning away and storming off without a second glance. That was the moment I realized the truth. I had given up a woman who had always supported me, who had been willing to forgive me even after I betrayed her, for a relationship that was built on nothing but passion and illusion. I began to feel hollow, as if the life I had once cherished was slipping further and further away, replaced by an emptiness I couldn't escape. I thought back to Laura, her quiet strength, her patience, the way she had always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. I thought about the home we had built together, the shared moments of joy and struggle, and now I was left with a marriage that felt shallow, with a woman who demanded everything but offered nothing in return. I looked around at the life I had chosen, and all I could see were the remnants of the decisions I had made in the heat of the moment. I had destroyed the life I once held dear, and for what? For a fleeting thrill, for the illusion of youth and excitement. Sitting alone in the dark, I realized the full extent of my mistake. I had traded something real and enduring for a fantasy, and now I was left with nothing but regret. I had lost Laura, lost the family we had built, and now I was trapped in a marriage that felt more like a prison than a partnership. I'm sitting alone in the house that Lily and I picked out together. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where I could rebuild my life from the ground up. But instead, this house feels empty, hollow. The walls are white and bare, the chairs mostly unused, and there's a cold, sterile air I can't shake off. I look around the living room. There's nothing here except a coffee table and a few pieces of modern furniture Lily chose. Everything looks stylish and polished, but there's no warmth, no trace of a real home. There are no family photos, no sentimental knickknacks, like the ones Laura and I had collected over the years. I realize I'm living in a space that feels foreign, where even the familiar has become distant. Lily isn't the same woman she once was. The joy and passion that once defined our relationship have faded. After we moved in together, the excitement and thrill began to wear off. Our arguments became more frequent, and there were nights when she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Lily constantly demanded more, never satisfied with what I could offer. She wanted trips, luxuries, but she wasn't there for me when I needed support. I used to think that being with Lily would give me the freedom and happiness I lacked in my marriage with Laura. But now I see that I've lost far more than I ever imagined. I traded a wife who was always patient, who forgave me even when I didn't deserve it, for a fleeting affair that burned bright but offered no lasting comfort. I abandoned a family I had built over 2 decades for a fantasy that couldn't withstand reality. It's a winter evening, and I'm sitting alone at the dining table, the soft glow from the chandelier reflecting off the glass of red wine in front of me. I realize that I've lost everything. I've tried to escape this truth, convincing myself that I made the right choice. But now, with no one by my side, with the echoes of an empty house surrounding me, I can't lie to myself anymore. I pull out my phone and scroll through old photos of my family. Laura's gentle smile, our daughter sitting on my shoulders at the park, the 3 of us laughing together. These are moments I'll never get back. Memories that belong to a chapter of my life I single-handedly destroyed. I tried calling Laura a few times after she left, but she never answered. I received a letter from her lawyer, informing me that the divorce was finalized. It was the end of a chapter 1 had written all wrong, and now I had to live with the fact that there was no chance to rewrite it. Lily walks into the room, seeing me sitting there with a glass of wine in my hand. She sighs, clearly annoyed. "You're drinking again?" she asks, her tone filled with disdain. I told you, I don't want to live with a man who spends every night drinking. I look up at her, feeling nothing but emptiness inside. I'm sorry, I whisper, though I'm not even sure what I'm apologizing for. The drinking, the failed marriage, or the countless wrong decisions I've made. What good is sorry? Lily snaps, her voice sharp. You've promised me so much, but you never deliver. I'm tired of this. With that, she turns and storms off, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I'm left sitting there, the sound of the door echoing in my head, a stark reminder of the loneliness I've brought upon myself. I look out the window, the night sky covered with thick clouds, not a single star in sight. I wonder if I can ever start over again, if it's possible to make amends for the mistakes I've made. But the truth is, some things once lost can never be regained. I lost Laura. I lost the family we built together. Now I'm trapped in a marriage without love, filled only with emptiness and regret. There's no one left to blame but myself. This is the price I have to pay for my selfishness, for the decisions I made in a moment of weakness. I get up, pour myself another glass of wine, and step out onto the balcony. The cold wind bites into my skin, carrying the scent of rain about to fall. I take a sip of the wine, looking down at the city sleeping quietly beneath the streetlights. I wonder if I'll ever find a sense of peace again. But perhaps, I'll never know the answer.